Leaders from 101 countries and organizations wrapped up 2 days of discussion on ending Russia's war in Ukraine with a show of unity against Russian aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for a diplomatic solution to end the war.
We are here today for the sake of diplomacy, and Ukraine has always believed in the power of diplomacy. War is not our choice, it's Putin's choice. At the Peace Summit today, we will do everything we can to start moving towards real peace.
Russia was not invited, but just before the summit, President Vladimir Putin demanded that Ukraine withdraw from territory captured by Russia and abandon its goal of joining NATO. US and other representatives at the summit saw this as an ultimatum, saying Russia has no intention of fostering peace or real negotiations.
He is not calling for negotiations, he is calling for surrender. America stands with Ukraine not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We stand with delegations from more than 90 nations who also have a strategic interest in a just peace in Ukraine.
China also did not attend the summit. Michael Carpenter, Senior Director for Europe at the National Security Council, says its absence reflects Beijing's support for Russia in the war, which he says has included providing Russia with defense technology and components.
We're talking about components like nitrocellulose, microprocessors, optics, other things that are directly used for Russian weapons that are not just being used in Ukraine, but for our European partners. It's important to understand that pose a long-term threat to European security.
Some African leaders also were present, highlighting the magnitude of the war in Ukraine, a leading producer of grain for the world. Speaking at the end of the meeting, Ghana president says the consequences of Russia's aggression extended far beyond Europe.
In many ways, Africa has been the greatest victim of the conflicts. Consideration is given to the disruption of global trade, supply chains, lines, and the blockade of the Black Sea have had devastating impacts on our economies, on our standards of living. High inflation, skyrocketing prices of foodstuffs.
Most of the participants in Switzerland signed the final document of the summit. However, some, including South Africa, Brazil, India, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, abstained. Ukrainian representatives announced the start of preparations for the next summit, which they aim to organize before the U.S. presidential elections. Representatives of some of the nations said they hope to see Russia at the negotiating table then.
The summit participants agreed that Ukraine needs a just peace based on international law and the UN Charter. And this gathering was the first step towards sustainable peace in Europe. Myroslava Gongadze, VOANews, Bergenstock Resort, Switzerland.